There are nights in professional wrestling that fans remember. And then, there are nights that change the industry, nights that draw a line in the sand, separating before and after. We often think we know what's coming. We analyze the rumors. We watch the patterns. We convince ourselves that the business is predictable. We feel safe in our understanding of how this world works. Company A stays here. Company B stays there. The borders are electrified, guarded by contracts and loyalty. But what happens when the biggest star in one universe simply decides to appear in the other? Not with warning, not with rumors, but simply appears? This is the story of a moment that nobody saw coming. A moment that shattered the illusion of separation and sent a shockwave through the entire foundation of the sports entertainment world. This is the story of the night Rhea Ripley broke the rules, and the silence that followed. It was a standard Wednesday night, another episode of AEW Dynamite, live coast to coast. The main event had just concluded, a chaotic tag team match that left the crowd energized but satisfied. People were starting to check their phones, thinking about the drive home, mentally preparing for the end of the show. The commentators were wrapping up, signing off with their usual catchphrases. The house lights had even begun to rise slightly, that familiar gentle cue that the show is over. And then, a flicker. The audio cut out. Not a feedback squeal, but a sudden digital void. The giant arena screens glitched, showing static for a brief second before plunging into total darkness. This wasn't a planned blackout. This felt wrong. A low, confused murmur rippled through the thousands of fans. You could feel the collective tension. It was the kind of silence that feels heavy, the kind where you can hear the person 3 rows behind you whisper, "What's going on?" The air crackled, not with excitement, but with genuine, unnerving confusion. The routine had been broken. Something was off. In the age of polished, perfect television production, this kind of dead air, this total sensory deprivation, felt like an error. It stretched for 5 seconds, then 10. The darkness became uncomfortable. And then, from that void, a sound. It wasn't an explosion. It wasn't a theme song fans recognized. It was a low, distorted bass note, a deep thrum that you felt in your chest more than you heard with your ears. The crowd grew silent, waiting. And then, the riff. A grinding, ruthless, unmistakable guitar riff. But it was raw, stripped down, different from the version they knew. A single, stylized black and white image of a scale flickered onto the broken screens. The crowd didn't erupt yet. They were frozen. It was the sound of realization. 10,000 minds trying to process an input that simply didn't belong. And as the riff built, a single solitary figure emerged from the entrance tunnel, bathed in a harsh, cold blue backlight. A silhouette, the spiked leather jacket, the unmistakable physique. The arena detonated. It wasn't a cheer. It was a scream, a sound of pure, unadulterated shock. Phones shook. People grabbed their heads, and the camera focused. It was her, Rhea Ripley, the reigning, defending, undeniable WWE Women's World Champion, was standing on an all-elite wrestling stage. The industry didn't just have its forbidden door kicked open. The entire wall had just been reduced to dust. She didn't move for a full minute. She just stood there, letting the chaos wash over her. The mummy chants were mixed with holy seat chants, a bizarre symphony of confusion and ecstasy. This wasn't the Rhea Ripley they knew from Monday nights. There was no arrogant smile, no playing to the crowd. Her face was cold, devoid of emotion. This wasn't a fun crossover. This was an invasion. She began to walk, slowly, deliberately, her boots echoing on the ramp. The camera operators were visibly shaking, struggling to keep the shot steady. In the ring, the AEW Women's Champion, who had been celebrating her match, was frozen in disbelief, her title belt hanging limply in her hand. Rhea circled the ring, a shark examining its prey. She didn't slide under the ropes, she stepped over them, an act of dominance. She was handed a microphone. The arena went deathly quiet, hanging on a single breath. She stared at the champion, then at the title. She didn't yell. She spoke in a low, menacing whisper that the mic picked up with frightening clarity. "You call yourself a champion?" she said. "You're just keeping my seat warm." She dropped the microphone with a deafening thud. She never laid a finger on her. She didn't have to. The statement had been made. If the arena was chaos, the backstage area was a meltdown. In the gorilla position, the area just behind the curtain, producers and executives were screaming into headsets. Who cleared this? Is this a bit? Is she under contract? Security teams were scrambling, not knowing whether to arrest her or protect her. Other AEW wrestlers, who had been waiting for their own segments, lined the hallways, their jaws on the floor. You could see the entire social structure of the locker room recalibrate in real time. Some faces showed anger. This outsider had just stolen the biggest moment of the year. Others showed a strange, terrifying kind of awe. The company's owner, Tony Khan, was reportedly seen on his headset, his face pale, oscillating between what looked like fury and absolute adrenaline-fueled shock. This one act had rendered every other storyline, every other planned feud, completely irrelevant. The entire broadcast truck was in disarray. Do we cut to commercial? Do we keep filming? They chose to film. They knew, even in their panic, that this was the most important footage they would ever capture. The power dynamic of the entire wrestling world had just been reset, live on air, without a script. It took less than 15 seconds. The first grainy phone footage, filmed from the upper decks, hit social media before the broadcast even caught up. The clip was shared 1,000 times, then 100,000. Within 10 minutes, Rhea Ripley was the #1 trending topic on the planet, surpassing global politics, movies, and sports. The internet, as we know it, simply broke. Servers crashed. Wrestling news sites, the dirt sheets, went down under the sheer volume of traffic. Every journalist, every insider was scrambling, sending frantic texts. Is it real? Is this a work? Denial was the first reaction. It's a look-alike. It's deep fake. But the broadcast quality footage followed, and the denial turned to pandemonium. WWE loyalist forums were a sea of betrayal and heartbreak. How could she? This is the ultimate betrayal. AEW fan groups were triumphant, yet just as confused. She's with us now. What does this mean? The moment wasn't just a story. It was the only story. It was a digital wildfire that consumed everything in its path. Every other wrestler, on every other promotion, was suddenly irrelevant. The world was watching one person. The wrestling media machine went into overdrive, but it was spinning its wheels. There were no sources for this. This wasn't a planned business move, it was a rogue act. Journalists called their contacts within WWE. The response? Silence. Absolute, deafening, terrifying silence. No angry press releases. No statements about breach of contract. The official WWE social media accounts simply stopped posting. They went dark. This lack of response was, paradoxically, the most telling response of all. It confirmed the truth. They were blindsided, completely and totally unprepared. This wasn't part of a story. This was a rupture. On the AEW side, chaos reigned. Contradictory reports emerged. It was a one-night-only deal. She is signed. It was a mistake. The truth was, nobody knew. The power structure was in freefall. This wasn't a calculated move in a war. It was a lone operative setting off a bomb in the middle of the peace talks. The media couldn't report the why, so they just obsessed over the what, and the what was impossible to look away from. The entire industry held its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But why? This was the question that haunted everyone. Why would Rhea Ripley, a performer at the absolute pinnacle of her career, do this? She wasn't just a star in WWE, she was the star. She was Mommy, a cultural phenomenon that transcended the ring. She had merchandise, main events, premium live event posters. She had everything, but perhaps that was the problem. We often talk about the glass ceiling. We rarely talk about the pressure of the glass throne. When you are the face of a billion-dollar company, you are no longer just a person. You are a brand. You are a commodity. Your every move is scheduled, scripted, and marketed. The Mommy persona was a monster she had created, but perhaps it had also become a cage. The artist inside the superstar may have been suffocating, desperate to do something unpredictable, something real. This wasn't a move for money or fame, she already had that. This was a move to feel the one thing the corporate machine couldn't give her: chaos. She wasn't just crossing a border, she was reclaiming her own narrative, proving that she was in control, not the system. And then there was the human element, the part of the story whispered in the shadows. Her real-life partner, Buddy Matthews, is a prominent star in AEW, a member of the House of Black. For years, their careers existed in separate universes, a professional divide separating their personal lives. Was this at its core a human decision? A move to finally align her personal and professional worlds, regardless of the consequences? And what about her other family? The Judgment Day, Dominic Finn, JD. They were reportedly as blindsided as the rest of the world. Their social media, usually so arrogant and coordinated, was silent. This wasn't part of their plan. This was their leader, their mummy, abandoning them without a word. The story of the unbreakable faction was shattered in an instant. The emotional complexity was staggering. Had she chosen her real family over her scripted one? Or was she, in her own ruthless way, sending a message to both? That her loyalty belonged only to herself. The fallout wasn't just corporate, it was deeply, profoundly personal. When the sun rose the next day, the wrestling world was fundamentally different. The dust hadn't settled. It had simply revealed that the old landscape was gone. This one act had proven that the forbidden door was never a real door. It was just an idea, a gentleman's agreement. And Rhea Ripley had just taken a sledgehammer to it. Suddenly, every wrestler in every company saw the world differently. The us versus them tribalism that had fueled the fan bases for years suddenly felt juvenile. The power had, in one night, shifted entirely from the promoters to the talent. Rhea had proven that the real star isn't beholden to the brand. The brand needs the star. Every contract negotiation moving forward, every backstage discussion, every creative pitch would now be measured against this moment. What if they pull a Rhea? The impossible was now possible. The unthinkability of a top-tier champion walking onto a rival's show was no longer unthinkable. She hadn't just changed her own career. She had changed the very nature of what a wrestling career is. The consequences would echo for a decade. But the strangest part of the story, the part that became the real mystery, was what happened next. Everyone waited for the follow-up. Would she be on WWE programming, fired live on air? Would she appear on the next AEW show, challenging for the title? The answer was neither. Rhea Ripley vanished. She didn't appear on any television show. Her social media went dark. The truth, which trickled out in quiet, terrified whispers weeks later, was the final devastating twist. Her WWE contract had not expired. She was not a free agent. What the world had witnessed wasn't a defection. It wasn't a new contract. It was a deliberate, catastrophic, career-ending breach of contract. She had knowingly, willingly walked onto her competitor's show while under an ironclad multi-million-dollar deal. This wasn't a business move. It was an act of artistic sacrifice. She hadn't done it to join AEW. She had done it to prove that she could. She had become so powerful that the only person left to defeat was the system itself. And in that one moment she had. She wasn't just mommy. She was a revolutionary.